17 years ago, I was fresh out of graduate school, and I was very fortunate to join the Xerox Palo Alto Research Center, Xerox PARC in California, as a member of their research staff. And it was kind of a big opportunity for me as a young, fresh graduate, and that was such a storied place. It was a place where they had invented the personal computer and the Ethernet and all of these other things. So felt like I was joining a piece of history. And when I joined PARC, I was hired by Mark Weiser. Mark Weiser was the chief technologist at Xerox PARC, and he was a big thinker in the area of ubiquitous computing. Everybody, when they referred to him now, people always append the father of ubiquitous computing at the end of his title, or his name. And ubiquitous computing is what they used to call the Internet of Things before it became the Internet of Things. He wrote a paper called A Computer for the 21st Century in 1991, and in that paper, he said the following. He said, "The most profound technologies are those that disappear. They weave themselves into the fabric of everyday life until they become indistinguishable from it." Did I say 99? 91. 1991, he wrote that paper. And that was published in Scientific American. And it really ushered in an era of thinking about how computers transition from being boxes on your desk to being all of the objects and the Internet of Things. So one of the things that Mark did is he had hired somebody named Rich Gold, and Rich Gold ran a group called Research and Experimental Documents at Xerox PARC. And Rich was somewhat of a provocateur. He had been a conceptual artist, he had been an electronic musician, he had been an inventor, he had designed coin-operated games. He was probably best known at the time for designing the Nintendo Power Glove for Mattel. He also had designed before that the first of a whole genre of games that became the sim games. He did something called Little Computer People, and it was the first thought of doing a game in your computer that actually had, little people running around and such. So he was this kind of thinker who was always just sort of making up things and seeing things through a different light. He was a provocateur, he was a philosopher, and his job at PARC was to ask deep questions and to try to provoke people. So all of the presentations he did and all of the kind of work he did with this signature style. And the style was these deceptively simple cartoons that he would do in PowerPoint mostly. And he would go up, and whether he was presenting at Davos in front of Fortune 500 people or just leading a team meeting, this kind of Rich Gold cartoon style became his signature. And so what I'd like to do today, both Rich and Mark passed away early, both of them, and suddenly. And they were both really influential on me and on a lot of people. And Rich became a little bit of a mentor to me while I was there. So given that it's been 21 years since he wrote this piece, I felt like it's a good idea to kind of bring it back into the foreground. And I'm going to do a reading now of a piece that he first presented at Ars Electronica in 1993, the art festival, and then subsequently published in the International Journal of Cybernetic Systems Engineering. So this stuff that he did always span between the arts and science and engineering and design, and that was really his calling card. So I'm going to go ahead and just read this piece verbatim. Why would anyone want to live in an intelligent house? What would be the forces that would compel a designer or an architect to create such a thing? How would it be marketed? What sorts of problems does such a house solve? What sorts of problems does it create? Could you describe such a house? Do you believe that such a house is possible now or in the near future? Is it likely that such a house, once built, purchased, and moved into, would perform as advertised? What sorts of unforeseen problems are likely to emerge? What kinds of alterations to the house will designers be able to make to correct these problems? Who will pay for these alterations? If you're a designer, isn't a world full of problems more lucrative than a world without problems? How is an intelligent house different from an intelligently designed house? Given a choice, which would you prefer to live in? How about a basically stupid house, but one that is quite pleasant if you live in it intelligently? Do smart houses prevent you from watching dumb TV? Do smart houses take part in the action of TV shows by, say, adding lighting and special effects? If you don't have children, but would like some, do smart houses add the patter of little feet? Does the patter get louder as the children grow up? How smart does the bed in your house have to be before you are afraid to go to sleep at night? Which is smarter? Awnings over the windows to keep out the sun? Or a massive interactive cybernetic cooling system that attempts to keep the temperature of the house within 1 degree of optimal? If you were an engineer, fresh out of college with a major in electrical engineering, which would you prefer to design? Would you put warning labels on the windows telling the occupants not to open them because it would mess up the temperature feedback loop? Do you consider the dam on the river that generates the electricity for the computer which runs the cooling system as part of the house? Is the family dog considered an occupant of the house? Would you believe somebody who told you that on a linear scale with a toaster at one end and a 2-year-old baby at the other, that artificial intelligence is about 1 breadcrumb away from the toaster? Do you believe that with enough speed and enough memory and enough 20-year-old programmers that computers can have emotions? Do you believe that when water is heating on the stove, the water is running a program, calculating an equation that tells it when to start boiling? In a smart, ever-watchful house, does the water ever boil? Do houses evolve? Do smart houses evolve? In the house in which you currently live, is there a membrane or a wall between the kitchen and the dining room? Was there one in your parents' house? In your grandparents' house? In your artist girl or boyfriend's house or loft? Which design is smarter? Does your cappuccino maker always make perfect cappuccinos? How much time does it take? Does your neighborhood cafe make perfect cappuccinos? If you had the time, where would you prefer to have your cappuccino? Is your neighborhood cafe run by a computer? Would it be better if it was? Where did you meet your wife, your husband, your lover? How do burglar alarms work? Can they tell the difference between, say, a burglar and a squirrel that got lost and found its way into your kitchen? Can you tell who is a burglar when you walk down the street? What if you were given a burglar profile by the police or by your mother? Could you then tell who is a burglar? If you could program your burglar alarm to recognize the burglar profile, would you need to lock your doors? Would it make sense to ask if an intelligent house would rather have a mouth than a door? Who will program the user preferences for the intelligent house? Mom? Dad? The kids? Will the intelligent house be able to meaningfully average these preferences? Does control of the intelligent house's preferences alter the balance of power within the family? Will this make the family more stable or less stable? Should local, state, or national laws be passed which regulate some of these preferences? What if some of these settings could endanger children? What if some settings were only ever used by criminals? What if some settings are good but not perfect indicators that child molesters live in the house? If you or one of your family members was often constipated, would you want your smart house to automatically blast low-frequency waves out of the PA system if such waves helped? What if they were activated by a button which had to be pressed? What if you frequently forgot to press the button? Would you then want the waves to be automatically activated? Would you want your house to monitor your stool to determine if it should blast out low-frequency waves? What if, by monitoring your stool, it could determine very early if you had cancer? Should it send that information directly to your doctor? What if your insurance rates would go down if it did? What if your smart house remembered important dates, like birthdays, and sent cards and balloons, baked special cakes, and chilled the champagne on the right days? Would you feel good if you received a card generated by your lover's house? If your otherwise always forgetful lover started suddenly remembering your birthday, would you become suspicious? Would it be possible that you would break up with your lover based on the forgetting or the remembering to program their smart house to send you a birthday card? If it turned out that you would get a 25% discount on the price of your home if instead of paintings, you had to place advertisements on the wall, would you do it? How about if the advertisements were controlled by your smart house and changed depending on what you were doing? In what ways do you consider a TV to be different from a painting? What if you could get a 75% discount? If your house had the license to make McDonald's hamburgers, how many times a week would you eat them? When you design new things, do you think you are solving a problem? When you design new things, do you think you are engaged in the dominant ritual behavior of your tribe? When you acquire things, do you think you are solving a problem? When you acquire something, do you think you're engaged in the dominant ritual behavior of your tribe? If you're an artist, does each one of your works solve a problem? If you buy works of art, does each work of art purchased solve a problem? If you're an artist and you're only allowed to create in your lifetime 5 works of art, what would they be? Do you think it's within the realm of possibility that the intelligent house can eliminate the perception of the 4 seasons and allow the inhabitant to have whatever season he or she wishes to have that day? Do you think that intelligent houses can eliminate day from night? Do you think it could stretch time? If the rest of your family lived in Japan, could your smart house keep your life in perfect sync with theirs? Is the architecture of time more or less important than the architecture of space? Do you count the hours and minutes that you're alive? What role did money play in selecting the house you currently live in? How smart is that house? How smart does your house allow you to be? If you had more money to spend on your house, would it be smarter? If it was a more expensive house, could you be smarter? Is it possible that your intelligence is defined exactly by the intelligence of your house? Or if not your intelligence, your savoir-faire, your coolness? Is that why you want an intelligent house? If asked, would you say that a house is a machine, a tool, a piece of clothing, a skeletal extension, a work of art, a statement, a sculpture, an engine, an invitation, a living organism, a virtual being, a respite, a cybernetic system, a vessel, a shrine, an object of veneration, a document, a discourse, a castle, a coat rack, a refuge, a nightmare, the centerpiece of male-dominated capitalist culture, a home? Does your son or daughter ask you for a story before he or she goes to bed at night? If your son or daughter asked you for information instead of a story, what information would you give him or her? Do you want information or a story from your house? Do you believe that the nightly news is giving you information or a story? If the news could be tailored for your individual tastes, what would be different, the information or the story? If your house needed to hear a story for it to go to sleep, what story would you tell it? The 3 Little Pigs? What information would you give it? Would you tell it that it's just a machine? How many people do you think the earth can support, such that they all could live in reasonable homes? Do you think that the house you build to make you happy makes an equal or greater number of people unhappy somewhere else? What is the difference between a smart house and a happy house? In which would you rather live? Is allowing you to work at home an altruistic gesture by corporations or a method by which they can eke out even more work from their employees? Would you still work at home if your company asked if they could monitor you so that they knew you were working and not playing with your son or your daughter? When working at home, would you really rather be at work with your other coworkers? If you had a video link into work, would you feel like you were there? If you had a perfect telepresent robot that you could operate from work and that would take care of your son or daughter, would you rather be at work? Do you think children brought up by telepresent robots would be different to children brought up by a mother or a father? If you had to hire an employee for a difficult programming task, what kind of childhood background would you look for? If making new things makes money, why would a designer not make new things? Is it possible to make money by making fewer things? By making nothing? By eliminating things? Is a designer who doesn't make new things a designer? Is he or she a Luddite? Are the highest paid architects the ones that make expensive houses or inexpensive houses? Can a house built with modern computer technology still be expected to work 10 years from now? Do you currently have any 10-year-old computers in your house? Do you expect your children to live in your house? Your children's children? Your children's children's children? Will your smart house still be smart then? Do you consider living in an intelligent, fully computerized house to be work? Will there be computerized forms you have to regularly fill out to keep it working? Will you have to perform regular maintenance on it? How does this differ from work? Do you take vacations now from your house, say to simple cabins in the woods? Will you take vacations from your smart house to, say, suburban houses? If a smart house decides that it doesn't like you, can it leave and find another employer? So that was actually excerpted. It's actually a bit longer than that. And there are a couple of pieces like this that he did that are questions pieces like that. There's a lot of other kind of writing he did, and a lot of very interesting, very provocative stuff he did with his cartoons, and also with his research, and also with objects that he created. A couple of years before he died, he wrote this book, The Plenitude, and The Plenitude is a collection of a lot of the projects and stories that he's made, and it's also done a little bit as an autobiography, and it's definitely worth looking at if you're embarked in this endeavor of ubiquitous computing / Internet of Things / smart ... whatever it is for you. So thanks for your attention. I appreciate the ability to be here today.